Everyone, welcome back. My name is Shaheen, and in this video, I will be talking about causal effects via DAGs, or in other words, directed acyclic graphs. So this video is part of a larger series on causal effects. In the previous video of this series, we defined causal effects using something called the do operator, and then this led us to the concept of identifiability. So that's where we're going to start our discussion today. So identifiability is all about answering this question: can the causal effect be evaluated from the given data? So one way we can define causal effects is via the average treatment effect, or ATE for short. And in the previous video, we defined the ATE using this equation. And so I don't want to spend too much time on it because I broke this down in the previous video, but here we have an expectation value for an outcome variable y given an intervention in a treatment. So that's what this do operator is representing, subtracted by the expectation value of the same outcome but for a different valued intervention. So from this view, the question of identifiability reduces to the following: can the interventional distribution be expressed in terms of observational distribution? So on the left here, we have an interventional distribution, which we discussed in the previous video. And this is what we're seeing in our definition of the average treatment effect. And on the right here, we have a observational distribution. So a key point is, in the real world, the data we collect is usually an observational distribution. So expressing these interventional distributions in terms of the things we actually measure is what identifiability is all about. And so we actually saw an example of this in the previous video, where we had this DAG on the left, directed acyclic graph, representing the causal connections between different variables in our problem. And we saw that we could express this interventional distribution in terms of observational data alone, and this is the result that we saw. What allowed us to do this in the previous video is that this is a special type of causal model. It is a so-called Markovian causal model. So these are models that satisfy two conditions. One, they have no cycles, and two, there are no unmeasured noise terms that simultaneously cause two or more variables. So we can make this a bit more concrete with some examples. So the first one here, this is an example of a causal model or DAG that is not Markovian because it has a cycle, as we can see here. We have another example of a non-Markovian causal model. So even though there are no cycles, we have this unmeasured variable x, which is simultaneously causing two variables a and b. But then on the far right here, we have a Markovian model because there are no cycles and we have unmeasured variables, but they are not simultaneously causing two or more other variables. And so a key point about Markovian causal models and why we care about them is that if our causal model is Markovian, then the causal effect is always identifiable. And we saw this in the previous video via the truncated factorization formula. However, things become much more interesting when we have these unmeasured, unobserved confounders. So let's take a look at a concrete example of this. Suppose we have this Markovian model, but then suppose Jimmy forgot to turn on the Z2 sensor. So actually this Z2 variable is unobserved. And so now this model is not Markovian because we have an unobserved variable that simultaneously is causing two other variables. We can equivalently express this model by removing Z2 and connecting Z3 and Y with a bidirected edge. And so we started with a Markovian model, but now with just missing information about one variable, the model is no longer Markovian. And we can see that in two ways. The middle one has this unobserved variable that causes two or more other variables. And then this far right model actually has a cycle in it because we have this loop here. But as we saw in the previous video, even though this model is not Markovian, the causal effect is still identifiable in this case. And so identifying causal effects of non-Markovian models brings up two graphical criteria: the backdoor criterion and the front door criterion. Basically, these are graphical tests that we can apply to a directed acyclic graph, either Markovian or not, to answer the question of identifiability, or in other words, evaluate whether the causal effect can be evaluated from the data that we are given. So I'm going to define each of these criteria and give a concrete example for each. But first, we need to define two concepts. The first concept is that of a backdoor path. So a backdoor path between two nodes, say x and y, is any path that starts with an arrow pointing into X and terminates at Y. So looking at this example on the left here, all the backdoor paths in this DAG are listed here. So we have X to Z1 to Z3 to Y, X to Z1 to Z3 to Z2 to Y, X to Z3 to Y, and then X to Z3, Z2 to Y. Notice that when talking about backdoor paths, the only arrowheads we pay any attention to are the ones going into X. The second concept is that of blocking. And so a path P is said to be blocked by a set of nodes Zi if and only if two conditions are satisfied. The first is P contains a chain, and this is an example of a chain here, or a fork, and then this is an example of a fork here, such that B, this middle variable, is an element in the set Zi. And so this is what we might intuitively think of as blocking. We have some flow of information, so to speak, from A to C via the chain or the fork. And if we remove B or adjust for it, we essentially block the flow of information between A and C. The second point is that P contains a collider, or in other words, an inverted fork, such that B and any of its descendants are not in Zi. This point is a little less intuitive, at least it was for me when first learning about this. So the way to think about this is that A and C in a inverted fork are statistically independent. However, if we condition on B, we generate a statistical dependence between A and C. And so this is also known as Bergson's paradox. So basically, all this second point is saying is that we are not creating a statistical dependence between A and C by conditioning on it or including it in our set Zi. And so here are some examples using the DAG on the left here. So Z3 blocks the path X, Z3Y, so this one, because it is the center node in this fork here. Another more interesting example is that Z1 blocks this path here because, again, we have a fork. But notice that Z3 does not block this path because Z3 is an inverted fork, or in other words, a collider. So if we were to include it in the blocking set, it would essentially open up a statistical dependence between X and Y. Okay, so with those two concepts of a backdoor path and blocking, we can finally define the backdoor criterion. So a set of nodes, Zi, satisfy the backdoor criterion relative to X and Y if no node in Xi is a descendant of X. So essentially, no node in this set Zi that we're considering comes after X. And 2, Zi blocks every backdoor path between X and Y. So the way we can evaluate this for this example DAG on the left here is we first write down all the backdoor paths between X and Y. So we have X to Z1, Z3 to Y, Z1, Z3, Z2 to Y, and so on. And we choose a set of nodes that block each of these 4 backdoor paths. And so in this example, we have 2 sets that satisfy this condition. We have Z1 and Z3. So we see Z1 blocks this path, as does Z3. Z1 blocks this path, but Z3 does not block this path. Z3 blocks this path, and Z3 blocks this path. And then almost trivially, the set Z1, Z2, and Z3 also satisfies the backdoor criterion. And so a set of nodes that satisfies the backdoor criterion is called a sufficient set. And once we've identified our sufficient set, we can immediately write down the interventional distribution using this equation here, where I is indexing our variables in our sufficient set. So here we can either use Z1 or Z3 or Z1, Z2, and Z3. And this is exactly what we saw in the example from the previous video. We initially had all 3 variables in our expression for the interventional distribution, but then magically we were able to remove Z2. So hopefully now you can see how that trick was done. And it's because Z1 and Z3 satisfy the backdoor criterion, so there's really no need to include Z2 in this expression. So next we have the front door criterion. A set of nodes, say Zi, satisfy the front door criterion relative to X and Y if these 3 conditions are satisfied. 1, Zi intercepts all directed paths from X to Y. 2, all backdoor paths from X and each element in Zi are blocked by the empty set. And 3, all backdoor paths from Zi to Y are blocked by X. So there's a lot to chew on here, so we're just going to go through each condition one by one for this example on the left here. The first condition is Zi intercepts all directed paths from X to Y. So the way we can evaluate this is by writing down every single directed path from x to y and just inspecting which sets of variables intercept each of these paths. As it turns out, for this example, it's really simple. We only have two directed paths from x to y. So we have x to z1 to y here, and then we have x to z2 to y. So really, there's only one set that satisfies this first condition, which is the set z1 and z2. But we're not done yet. Even though this set satisfies condition 1, we still need to check it against the other two conditions. So looking at condition 2, we need to evaluate whether all the backdoor paths from x to zi, our candidate set of variables, are blocked by the empty set. So the way to do this is we write down all the backdoor paths from x to each variable in zi. So here we have the backdoor paths between x and zi, and here, and then on the right hand side we have all the backdoor paths between x and z2. And so just looking at this backdoor path, we have x to z3 to y to z1. We see indeed that this backdoor path is blocked by the empty set because we have a collider in y. And then actually looking at every other of the backdoor paths, the collider at y is present in all of them. So indeed, all the backdoor paths between x and z1 and x and z2 are blocked by the empty set. That's a check mark for condition 2. And then finally, condition 3, we need to evaluate whether all the backdoor paths from zi to y are blocked by x. So again, we just write out all the backdoor paths between each variable in zi and y. So just looking at this path, we have zi to x to z3 to y. And then we can immediately see that x indeed does block this path because we have a chain where x is the center and there are no colliders. And this is the same exact story for actually all of these backdoor paths. We see x is either a chain or a fork, and so this satisfies our definition of blocking from before. Okay, so all three of these conditions are satisfied by our candidate set z1 and z2, which means we can write down the interventional distribution directly using this equation. And so this equation has a bit more going on than what we saw for the backdoor criterion because we have two different summations. So to make things a little more concrete, I'll write out this first summation for the example we have here. So since this set satisfies the front door criterion, we can write the interventional distribution like this. So notice we write out this sum. The first term is for z1, the second term is for z2, and this x here will correspond to the x on the left hand side. So this will be a fixed value based on the intervention that we are looking at. But notice we have this other x, this x prime, and what this is denoting is the summation over all possible values of x. So for example, if we had a binary treatment variable and x could take values of 0 or 1, then we would do this summation over both possible values of x. So we would write this out with x prime equals 0 and then x prime equals 1. And so this equation would go from 2 terms to 4 terms. Okay, so that's pretty much it. There is a blog associated with this material. So if you're interested in learning more, check that out. There are some more details there that I didn't include in the video. And if you enjoyed this content, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. So if you have any comments or questions, please share those in the comment section below. I find those very helpful for my own personal development and learning journey. And as always, thanks for your time and thanks for watching.